South Beach has been going south, so golden, not so golden, but gone in Miami. So what is the Canes' silver lining? Clemson is the best team in the ACC. I don't think anyone really questions that. At this point, there's no doubt. Will there be reason for doubt going forward? And how about Duke, Pitt, and North Carolina? Pick a winner out of a hat, and I'll buy it. This is ACC Breakdown. We come your way with the best bloggers in the conference each and every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We have with us tonight Brittany Taylor-Newman of Football.com, Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat, still with a big old smile on his face, and Ryan Cantor of Shaking the Southland. So, Al Golden out at Miami, but we have to talk about the play from this past weekend in Atlanta with Georgia Tech against all odds, returning a blocked field goal against Florida State to end the Seminoles' long winning streak in the ACC. Joey was there, so we need the first-hand account from you, Joey. What was it like?
Well, yeah, you're right. I was there. It was a homecoming game for Georgia Tech, and just kind of as I thought it would last week, it ended up being one of the most incredible atmospheres I've ever been a part of. It was under whiteout conditions, obviously homecoming, and not to mention that Florida State's in town. It always travels very well. So it was a very loud stadium, very active, very involved. Felt like it really kind of played into, honestly, the final drive that set up that field goal. Florida State suffered one or two crucial false start penalties with all the noise that was going on. It was everything I could have hoped for and more in terms of atmosphere. And then as that play happened, I'll tell you, I was in the upper stands and kind of watching it set up. I was looking straight down on where Aguayo was setting up to kick the ball, right there on about the 40-yard line or so. That's where they had the ball spotted. And they called timeout, and I'm looking around, people at me, and I had a couple of Florida State fans there, and I was saying, this is 57 yards, but this is in his range, isn't it? And they're like, oh, yeah. I was like, I figured. I couldn't remember how many Kicker of the Year national awards he had won because he's that good. And I just kind of haphazardly shouted out, let's pull some Michigan State stuff. I wasn't even thinking, just like, oh, whatever, okay, this will be fun. And then they did. It was incredible. They got the block, and everyone's kind of rejoicing, and everything kind of stops for a second as the ball's just laying there. And wouldn't you know it, but it's Lance Austin who picks up the ball. And as much as injuries have been a storyline for Georgia Tech this year, it's kind of crazy how that plays in here, because Austin was only on the field because one of the star players of Georgia Tech's defense, DJ White, was injured. And so he was playing in place of an injured DJ White. Picks up the ball, starts carrying it around, and has a convoy. And as I'm watching this unfold, it's like, he's not really going to get there, is he? Like, I halfway expected him to get tackled by the last guy and go to overtime, and he didn't. And it just, the stadium just gets louder and louder, and it was one of the most, I guess, immediate field rushings I've ever seen. Where usually it kind of takes a few minutes and people start trickling on, and next thing you know, just immediately just people pouring out of the stands. It was one of the craziest moments, and as a Georgia Tech fan and as a college football nerd, it's just so surreal to have been there and seen it with my own eyes and been a part of it. It was just amazing.
So Joey, I got to hear this again. You actually made the statement before the play, let's pull a Michigan State.
I said that in maybe slightly less family-friendly terms, but yeah, I said it like 2 or 3 times. I was like, let's just do it. Let's pull a Michigan State here, and so I take full responsibility, basically.
Thanks for cleaning up that comment for our humble show here. Thank you. I appreciate that. So where does this rank among Georgia Tech highlights in your football fandom? Because I know that the team's struggling, so it's not like a championship moment like going to the Orange Bowl, winning last year, but it's special. And like you say, I was on press row for the Bryce Drew versus Valpo, or for Valpo versus Ole Miss shot. So I was right there. It happened right in front of me, so that was really cool, and I see it every March. So this is kind of your moment in that realm.
Yeah, I look at this play, and not only in Georgia Tech history, but even in college football history. I fully expect this to be a really iconic moment that we're still talking about in 20 and 30 years. As I was walking out of the stadium, I was kind of comparing it to Cal Stanford. The band is on the field, you know, and to have been there for it is, you know, just the craziest thing to me. I was telling people, I was like, you know, one day I'm going to have some 10 and 12-year-old kids, and I'm going to say, hey, you know, did I ever tell you about the time that I was at, yes, Dad, you told us. You know, so it's so just like shocking, and it's still kind of sinking in and exciting. So just the craziest thing, and I could not be happier that I was there for it.
So we usually go to the blogger with the bragging rights in regards to the best record, the best team, which would obviously be Ryan, but since that was just so amazing, or we go ladies first, but I had to hear from Joey first on this one. So Brittany, we'll bring you in. Where do you think this play rates?
Well, I don't think it's as big as the Michigan State play, and it's for this reason. At the very beginning of the game, when Josh Sweat intercepted the ball, Florida State it was a first down. They were on the 2-yard line. They had 3 chances to be able to score, and they weren't able to get the ball across the goal line. I immediately began to think Florida State's probably going to be in some trouble tonight. They always struggle just a little bit with the attack and the triple option, but I really thought that the whole season long they looked like they were probably going to run into some trouble somewhere. And then when I saw that first possession end that way, I thought, well, you know, if all you could get out of that was a field goal, this is going to be a long night. So I think it's a little lower on the totem pole of disaster, simply because it looked all night long like they might not be able to pull it off. Dalvin Cook had only 82 yards for the entire night. He wasn't a big performer like he normally is. So had that game gone into overtime, I don't know that they would have pulled it off. Whereas Michigan, all you had to do was punt the ball or fall on it, and the game was over. I mean, that was a real simple, that should have been a cut and dry win there. So in terms of disaster, I think it ranks a little bit lower, but that was nonetheless painful for any of the Florida State fans watching, and nonetheless fun for any of the Georgia Tech fans watching for sure.
I agree with you. Extremely exciting play, tremendous. The 2 factors. I always have to bring the football angle into it and be the downer and not just enjoy the play. But we had 2 teams on the field at the Big House, Michigan State, that were vying for the Big Ten championship and maybe a college football playoff appearance. So that was one. Number 2, you had a lead by Michigan, not a tie game. But if you're just talking, and we talked about this before we started recording, was that you can rate plays just based on the sheer craziness of the play, regardless of the records, what's involved, what's at stake, or you can bring the logistics of the situation into it and what were the records of these teams, what are the implications, what are the ramifications of the game. Ryan, all your team did this weekend was win 58-0 and get a coach fired. So that was pretty insignificant.
It was probably, I would put it as the best performance by a Clemson Tiger team in ACC history. A 58-point win is the largest margin of victory. Interestingly, the last time they beat a team in the ACC by 58, it was Wake Forest in 1981, and they won the national championship. Miami's obviously a lot more talented than that Wake Forest team, or at least one would assume, and this one was on the road. So I think in 2 regards, it's great for the ACC. A, Miami takes a step, finally gets rid of Al Golden, who did some good things there, but it was really time to move on. They were really dragging their feet. So that program looks to rebound now, and Clemson establishes themselves as an elite team coming out of the ACC, and what a great week to do it when Florida State is kind of pushed out of that role.
I don't think there's any question that we would all agree that Clemson is the best team in the ACC right now, based on what they've shown. Ryan, what are your reservations about this football team? Do you have any reservations going to Florida State here in a couple weeks? That game at Clemson, but in regards to facing the Florida State Seminoles and anybody else on the schedule, what do you have any reservations about people getting a little bit too hyped about Clemson and putting them in the college football playoff automatically at this point?
To some extent, sure. I think one thing we've mentioned on our site, Shaking the Southland, quite a bit is depth issues. There's a handful of positions where the Tigers just can't afford to have an injury. Obviously, quarterback, left tackle. There's just a handful, maybe 6 or so guys, where if they go down, it's such a drop-off. Last year, the defense was the best in the country. This year, they've managed to be very good again because those second-teamers last year are now first-teamers. But now the guys who were third-teamers or they're freshmen, there's more of a drop-off. So we can't sustain injuries. And then, Florida State's just an excellent team. Obviously, they lost that game, but they're very talented. I should say they're talented more than they're excellent. So they're very dangerous, and they beat us 3 in a row. So if anyone's overlooking them, I think that's more than ridiculous.
So, Joey, we've got 58-0 Clemson over Miami. The Tigers move on to important games down the road while Miami tries to pick up the pieces, make something out of the 2015 season. Al Golden looked to be a good fit early in his stay at Miami. Your thoughts about Golden, your thoughts about the Clemson Tigers moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it was time for Golden to go. I mean, we've talked to our friend Cameron Underwood from State of the U, and I think he's very much been on the same train here for a while. Moving forward, I think it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of people talking about how this is going to be a very defining coaching search for the Miami football program, because you're going to see how much of a priority football is down there. And I think that people might be overestimating a little bit how good that job is. There are some people that would want to call it maybe a top 5 or a top 10 job, and I'm not entirely sure that it is. They've got a lot of things going against them. Talking about not having an on-campus stadium. You talk about some of the facilities that they do have. It is not as glamorous as some might think you would see at the U. And so I'm interested to see what they do. There's been some interesting names thrown around. One of them I heard was Mark Richt up at Georgia. I don't think that there's really any chance that happens. I mean, they're obviously just drawing on his history. He kind of cut his teeth in coaching at Florida State before going to Athens. So I think maybe some of those Florida connections is about it. But that's about that's the craziest thing I've heard, and I don't expect it to happen. And so I'm interested to see what happens with this coaching search, and I think it's going to tell you a lot about where the Miami program is going moving forward.
I'll give you 3 big positives to this job. Number 1, location. In regards to bringing talent there, people want to go to Miami, they want to go to LA, they want to go to the Deep South, they want to go where it's sunshiny and nice. Number 2, the name brand, there's still something there. I don't know if it resonates with a bunch of 18-year-olds, but maybe it does to a certain extent, because there's more knowledge of what happened in the past in this day and age because of the internet and documentaries, and kids are up to date on what's happened in the past. Whether that resonates, I don't know. And number 3, it's not Iowa or Nebraska that have big name brands, especially Nebraska, and they're expected to win, but where are the players? All we see are dust fields for 1,000 miles. We got to go get players. Unless they play the offensive line, we got to go get players. Miami, it's unbelievable. You talk about Cam Underwood. He's lined up metrics for us in regards to players in their own backyard. They don't have to leave the county to get 4- and 5-star recruits that are going to fill out their scholarship limits for the year. So you don't have to be a great recruiter. Just stay home and take all the 4 stars and pick a few others that you really want from some other states, but basically you can stay home and get the job done. Brittany, your thoughts on Al Golden, and if you want to throw in anything about the Clemson Tigers as well.
Well, that's a perfect segue. I actually wrote a piece earlier in the week about how Clemson was able to beat Miami on and off the field on Saturday, and that was in recruiting. They were able to walk into an area that's tired of Al Golden. It's got a little bit of disdain for where the program has ended up. They have quite a few players that are from that South Florida, Tampa area. They actually took a picture of all of them together and put it up on the Clemson Twitter after the game. So when you've got a game where so many Miami fans are leaving in droves, the stadium feels almost completely empty after halftime, and the cadence chant is just echoing and ricocheting off all of the empty chairs. What kind of a statement does that send about the dominance of your Clemson Tigers program in the middle of the hotbed of recruiting in a very, very talent-rich state of Florida? So that was actually something that I really thought helped Clemson. It sort of gave them a chance to be able to walk back in there. And Dabo has made no secret of the fact that he loves to recruit in Florida. He says that he gets a big advantage by visiting Tallahassee every other year. And he talked openly before the game about how one of the assistant coaches is assigned specifically to that South Florida area, and they try to take full advantage of that opportunity. So I think that worked out great for Dabo this weekend, that walking in and defeating them by the largest margin in their program's history. And I think that, like Joey alluded to, the firing of Al Golden's interesting because now we have to see how much Miami is willing to pay for a coach. Paul Feinbaum said something really interesting this week. For me, I live in Orlando, so we lost a couple of coaches this weekend. George O'Leary retired at UCF, and Al Golden was fired. And Feinbaum made the statement that he thinks that UCF is a more attractive coaching offer now than Miami is, based on the fact that they don't have a stadium on campus, the facilities aren't as nice as they are at UCF, the coaching job may not pay as well. So I'm really interested to see who would still be interested in the job at Miami. Will we see some of the big names that I think Canes fans expect to see, or will we see a drop-off and Miami have to go after an up-and-comer? I'm really curious, and I think a lot of that is going to come down to the paycheck that Miami is going to be willing to offer.
I will be shocked if Central Florida plays more for a coach than Miami, especially since Miami's talking about when you make a statement that this coach is not good enough to finish out the season, that it's that much of a business. Okay, he hasn't done anything morally or ethically wrong, so it's not one of those situations. It's a football decision, and you made it during the regular season. That means the football program is mighty important. I would think that they're going to shell out some serious dollars. It's been a surprise to me that Al Golden, considering the start that he had, that he weathered the NCAA violations, that he recruited top 25 and sometimes top 15 classes, wasn't able to take a roster that's arguably the most talented in the division and beat the likes of Pitt, Virginia, even at times has lost those games. And we see Duke in the last couple of years jumping up there. Teams that don't compare on the recruiting trail have beaten Miami, and he's 17-18 in the ACC, which sets us up very nicely, Brittany, for the North Carolina Pitt-Duke dominance in the Coastal Division. These teams still get no respect, and they're all undefeated in the ACC, and it sets us up for a nice little run throughout the rest of the season. And we've got a head-to-head matchup with Pitt taking on North Carolina, and it's still not going to wow anyone in regards to, wow, we got to see this game, but it's very important, Brittany.
Yeah, it's not going to wow anyone, but it is convenient timing because you've got Duke, Pitt, and UNC all contending for a chance at the Coastal Division title and to get to play presumably Clemson in a couple of months here. So the fact that it's a Thursday night game, it's kind of a convenient little matchup. If you're an ACC fan, you certainly have a vested interest in it. And I've got a piece that will be coming out tomorrow that's kind of covering some of the highlights, previewing the game a little bit. And it's definitely an interesting matchup, I think primarily because we've seen two teams play football in two such different fashions. They both just matched their win percentage for the year last year. So both teams are performing far better than they did last year and than they have in the past. UNC, however, has been winning by a large margin all season long. They've been winning by an average of 26 points. Pitt has been keeping games close. They've been winning by an average of 4 points. Pitt is ranked, though, and UNC right now is the only Power 5 team that has one loss that is not ranked. Pitt's ranked 23, UNC is not on there at all. So it's kind of interesting that UNC has been winning by such large margins, isn't ranked, and that UNC is favorited to win this game. And I kind of, at the end of my article, was thinking about taking UNC to win this game just because of the margin of victory that they've had. Until I kind of started to break down some of those wins. They've been winning with an average of 38.4 points per game. But then when you look at who they've been playing, they played at the beginning of the season after losing to South Carolina. They played the North Carolina A&T Aggies, the Illinois Fighting Illini, and the Delaware Blue Hens. I did not know until today that there were Blue Hens in college football. I am not ashamed to admit that. I didn't know. So obviously, I think the stats are just a little bit padded, and Pitt has been able to hold people to much, much closer, lower scoring margins in the fourth quarter of the game. So I think that may actually end up being their advantage. And I'll go ahead and throw my pick in there early. I'm now taking Pitt in this matchup. May not be that exciting of a game for the rest of the country, but yeah, as ACC fans, this is a big deal for us. If you want to see which teams are going to be playing in each division, it looks like Clemson's probably going to be playing for the Atlantic. The Coastal, it's anybody's game. We'll see what the Panthers do tomorrow night.
I'm joining Joey as a college football nerd, so I will watch the Pitt North Carolina game, no question about it. Even if I have to DVR it or whatever I need to do, I will watch the game because I need to see the game. I need to see the game. It's for first place in the division. I've got a trivia question that Brittany has set me up. There is a Super Bowl winning quarterback from Delaware. He is a blue hen. Who would that be?
I'm not going to be able to answer that one.
I'll give you a hint. The jury is out on whether he's elite or not.
That's Flacco.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. The jury is out on the eliteness, but
Yeah. He's got a Super Bowl trophy and an MVP.
Mark,
And Joey, I'll throw it out to you. Duke, Pitt, North Carolina. Who's the best team?
Okay, so I've seen Georgia Tech play and lose to each of these three teams, so I consider myself an expert on these three. First of all, I'm on record, and I will maintain that I am not a believer in Duke, and I never really have been, even through the last couple of years, and at this rate I may never be, as they continue to win. Their defense is obviously strong. It is solid. They've got a good, high draft pick probably in Jeremy Cash at safety. But their offense is just very unimpressive. Some of their highest scoring games, they scored 34 against Georgia Tech, but that included 2 special teams touchdowns. They just put up 45 against Virginia Tech in 3 or 4 overtimes. I mean, they're not going to score a whole lot of points, but they're going to hold you down. Point going to be that I think that the team that wins this game tomorrow, North Carolina and Pittsburgh, is the team that's going to be playing Clemson and Charlotte. I think that Carolina and Pittsburgh are both capable and probably should beat Duke down the stretch. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. As far as this game in particular, I think it sets up really interestingly, especially for college football nerds like us. This is very much like a fire and ice kind of game stylistically. On offense, you've got North Carolina that likes to sling it around and spread people out, and they've got playmakers kind of all over and talent every which way. And then on defense, they're kind of middling and trying to figure themselves out. And then you look at Pittsburgh, who's very much a smash mouth kind of offense, that they want to be very physical and they want to find ways to get the ball to their one playmaker, Tyler Boyd. And so kind of stylistically, offensively, they're very different. And then you look at Pitt's defense, which is very much a strength of the team. They're going to keep the game more often than not kind of lower scoring. The thing that scares me about picking Pitt is just knowing what Carolina's offense is capable of doing, and wondering if even with Carolina's average to below average defense, is Pitt's offense good enough to hold serve and keep up? Then again, we've seen Carolina get held to I think 28 points earlier this year, 26, excuse me. So as far as the game, I think I'm going to pick Pittsburgh. They're at home on a Thursday night. I like Pittsburgh to win this game, but regardless of who wins it, I'm picking them to go to Charlotte because I'm not a believer in Duke.
Both these teams are really close to being undefeated. Pitt lost on a 57-yard field goal on the road to Iowa, or they'd be 7-0. And Brittany mentioned the South Carolina and North Carolina game, a game that if you watch, the Tar Heels seemed to be the better team. They outplayed South Carolina for much of the game, but gave up a long touchdown run late. Marquise Williams threw 3 interceptions, and that was sealed the fate for the Tar Heels on that opening Thursday night. Otherwise, we got 7-0 and 7-0, and I would love to see, even at 6-1, because I like to see strange scenarios, I would love to see, especially Pitt, run the table, win the ACC championship, and say, there you go, College Football Playoff Committee. You got to put us in. So that's not going to happen
with Iowa.
Pardon me?
That very well could still happen with Iowa. They've got a lot of easy games. They need one big upset in the championship.
Yes. Yes, it could. So, Ryan, we'll start with you. You guys ready to look ahead to next week and pick some ball games? And if there's any team within these matchups for this Saturday that we haven't talked about, that you want to talk about when you do your pick, just let her go.
Yeah, let me make one comment on Al Golden before I get into picks. Aside from losing and getting completely blown out, it appeared that his team completely quit on him, especially after Brad Kaya got hurt. But even before that, they were giving a terrible effort, and maybe even worse than not giving a great effort, they were pretty classless. We went up, I think it was 35-0, and then there was a personal foul penalty enforced on the kickoff. I mean, when you're getting beat that badly, put your head down, get off the field. And they were just chippy the entire way. They didn't care about winning. They cared about having swag and starting fights. Dabo Swinney had to keep his team on the field because what he called a Bush League stadium, they have one tunnel, and he knew that if he let the Tigers go in at the same time, they'd get into it. So he was trying to be the more mature coach and have a more mature program that stood for more than just winning. So, yes, you'll lose, and Al Golden was fired primarily because he didn't win enough games, but that was an embarrassing game in multiple ways for that program. So I'm actually looking forward to them being able to move forward. I have nothing against Miami's program. Hopefully they'll reemerge. They are the best program long-term in the Coastal.
Well, at least in that way, they are upholding the Miami brand from
Very
years gone
true.
by. So, all right, Ryan, let's set you up. And yes, I'm glad that Cam's not here to just completely blast me for that comment.
Speaking of Cam, I think we found out who the best quarterback in the ACC was.
Well, one of them didn't have a chance of showing how good he was. All right, Ryan, let's set you up on this North Carolina Pitt game. It's on a Thursday night, and both teams are 6-1 and undefeated in the ACC. What's your selection?
Yeah, this is a really tough one. I could really go either way. I had Pitt at first. I thought about it, looked into it a little bit more. There's a reason UNC is favored. I see no reason to go against Vegas. UNC is the more talented team. They're more dangerous. They're the team that I would rather not play in the ACC championship because I think they have more. They're a little bit more explosive. But I think they'd probably go on the road and win this. Thursday night, they didn't have a bye week prior. Not a lot of confidence, but I'll take UNC.
Joey, am I right? You like the Pitt Panthers?
I'm going with Pittsburgh, but I'm like Ryan. I'm not super confident on it. I think they're pretty even teams, and give me the home team on a Thursday night.
Brittany, you like Pitt, right?
I like Pitt. UNC had 13 penalties against Virginia. It was a little bit sloppy. I think their numbers might be a little bit padded. It's definitely, like the guy said, it's definitely a close game. I could see either team winning it, but I'm going to give a little bit of an advantage to the Panthers for that reason.
All right, Brittany, let's stay with you. We've got Wake Forest at 3-5, so Bull Hope's still out there taking on Louisville. The Cardinals come in at 3-4.
I kind of like Louisville in this one. I think they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They've had a rough season, and Bobby Petrino's fired up, so I'm going to take Louisville.
What do you say, Joey? We've got Wake Forest hosting Louisville.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be a little closer than some people expect it to be, but I think Louisville's kind of finally getting some offensive identity. They're getting some young players involved and getting them more organized. They look better in recent weeks. I think it's within a 10-point game, but I like my my Louisville Cardinals to win that game.
Ryan, what you got on the Cardinals and the Demon Deacons?
Yeah, I think it's darn near a lock for the Cardinals. I've been saying this since they lost to Florida State. I think they're a good team. I think they have a great chance to win out.
It's almost a lock for the 3-4 Cardinals. Wow.
They're much better than the record, and that Houston loss doesn't look so bad anymore.
Okay, Ryan, let's stay with you. Hated Florida State hosting Syracuse.
I don't know who I hate more, but I will take Florida State.
Oh, that's right. I forget who I'm speaking to. We got this Clemson thing going on where we didn't want Syracuse in the ACC. I forgot about that. Good stuff. Joey, who do we have with Syracuse going to Florida State?
I think Florida State comes out ready to prove a point after last week, struggling to run the ball with Dalvin Cook. I think Syracuse is a very different team at home and on the road. I think Florida State wins this game by like 35 points. This is not even close by halftime.
Okay. What do you say, Brittany? We got Florida State and Syracuse.
I don't know if I'd say 35 points, but linebacker Reggie Northrup told the Tallahassee Democrat today that he thought the young players were taking advantage of the fact that they thought they would always win out. And I think he and a couple of the seniors are going to start a fire in that locker room and let everybody know, no, you actually have to work for wins, which is exactly what some of those young players needed. So I think this week they come out and try to make a statement against Syracuse. I'll take the Seminoles in that one.
Where's Dan when you need him? He would talk this one up. This is a bit rough at this point with Virginia Tech now 1-3 taking on 0-5 Boston College. Brittany, do you have a pick on this one?
I don't necessarily see good things for Boston College this week. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry.
What do you say, Joey? Hokies trying to get to postseason play, and I think that train has left the station for BC.
Yeah, neither team has been particularly impressive. I'm going to pick Virginia Tech, but I think more importantly, the over-under has been set at 37.5, and give me the under. I don't trust either of these teams at this point, but give me Virginia Tech.
Yeah, unless they go to overtime, they might get into the 20s. But wow, yeah, that could be a rock fight, definitely. Ryan, we got Boston College hosting Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Virginia Tech's a 2.5-point favorite. I'm not sure if they cover, but I think they win the game.
So Ryan's saying Virginia Tech wins by 1 or 2. Okay, Georgia Tech and Virginia, the Cavaliers at home at 2-5. Brittany.
I think Georgia Tech will ride off the momentum of this game and be able to close things up. Virginia has just been dismal this year. So I think Georgia Tech takes advantage of this. They've had talent all season long. It's just not been able to come out. So I'm hoping they harness it and run with it. I'll take the Yellow Jackets.
Joey, should we even ask?
Yeah, actually, you should. This game terrifies me as a Georgia Tech fan. I think it sets up horrendously as a letdown game. You know, coming off that emotional last-minute win and a great atmosphere, and now you go to Scott Stadium in Charlottesville, which is always a bit of a black hole, especially for Georgia Tech in history. You've got a bye week next week for a team that's been banged up and needs time off. I'm going to pick Georgia Tech. I think that they win this game. I think it's an ugly one, as they tend to be up in Charlottesville. But this game, I don't like the way it sets up for Georgia Tech. But give them to me, I don't know, 24-16 or something pretty low scoring like that.
Of course you're going to pick Georgia Tech. Okay, there was no doubt. I heard all the disclaimers, but of course it's Georgia Tech. Ryan, we got Georgia Tech trying to get off the mat and maintain their postseason status at 3-5, going to Virginia.
Yeah, quick note on the last game with Virginia Tech. They do have Michael Brewer back, so I think that gives them a big advantage. For Georgia Tech, I think Georgia Tech wins. They've played the top 6 teams in my ACC power rankings, and now their schedule really eases up. I don't know if they make a bowl game, but they could certainly make a run at it, and it starts with a win over Virginia.
I've got to think we're all picking Clemson against North Carolina State, right? We just talked for like 50 minutes about how they were the best team in the world. There's no way they're losing this game, right?
No.
Okay. All right. So we'll finish up with Miami and Duke, Brittany. Miami, we've seen it, and we seem to see it more in college football than ever before. Coach is out at midseason for whatever reason. Does this team play for the new coach? Do they fight for pride, or do they just collapse and the cards fall all over the place? Miami going to Duke.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't think the Hurricanes really have a shot here. Brad Kaya probably still will not be back. One of the other players lost his mother today, I believe it was. I saw it real briefly. I didn't have a chance to check and see who it was, but things are looking pretty dismal in the locker room, and the coaching staff is acknowledging that. So I don't think that there's been enough time for them to be able to rally. And as we saw last week, they kind of quit on the field. So there's not really a sense of pride there in this team already. We saw that last week. So unfortunately for the Hurricanes, I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off this week.
All right, Joey, we know that the talent might be on Miami's side, but Duke playing for something here at 6-1 and at home.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Miami give a much better effort for a different coach. I don't know for sure what that locker room looked like with Al Golden leaving. But the thing about Duke is that as much as I think the biggest thing about Duke is that they don't so much beat teams as they let other teams beat themselves. And if there's one thing that Miami does consistently through time, it's beat themselves. So I'll take Duke to win at home here. I don't think Miami's got a great chance, as much as they do have a lot more talent than the Blue Devils will.
Okay, Ryan, you might want to scout this one. Could be your competition in the ACC championship game. Duke hosting Miami.
I think they're both spot on, and I'll take Duke as well. I'd like to end with a little trivia question for you guys, if that's okay.
Sure, of course it is.
Who was Clemson's last unranked loss? Who was the last unranked team that Clemson lost to?
Was it the Wolfpack?
2011. I believe it was 35 games ago.
2011.
In Raleigh.
Is that the year that you went to the Orange Bowl and played West Virginia? I won't come up with
That was the year that we won the ACC.
Okay.
Do we have any guesses out there?
Oh yeah, Joey got it. It was the Wolfpack in
Oh,
Raleigh.
it was the Wolfpack. Okay. Very good. It's
So,
been a while. So Dabo Swinney's taking care of business. He's beating the teams he's supposed to beat, and he's beating other teams that he's not necessarily supposed to beat. I think at this point we'll see how this season plays out, but when we're here in a few months after the season compiling our top coaches in college football, not just the ACC, Dabo might be headed up the charts. I think he's done an outstanding job, and I think Ryan would agree with me and be able to give much more evidence for that argument. Definitely.
yeah, you can't debate the facts and the numbers. I'll look forward to delving into those with you at some point. Hopefully, it's merited.
Definitely, definitely. So we got Brittany Taylor-Newman from Football.com, Joey Weaver from the Rumble Seat, and Ryan Cantor from Shaking the Southland. This is ACC Breakdown. We do it up each and every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. All right, everyone. Appreciate the contribution as always. It was fun. See you next time.
Go ACC.